pretty busy actually.
So
Yeah, okay.
I don't know, we have to, part of what we've been trying to do is, low budget health. Yeah. So we're trying to take items that 11 so local stores, and create a recipe that's pretty simple, and then send home.
Why don't we go ahead and get started? There's only a few of us here, but we can still get going. A couple more may trickle in.
So I'll take a look.
Maybe you have an announcement, rather announcements
We've been invited to have a table to represent our initiative at the Healthy Communities panel, and it's going to be next Wednesday evening. So the event is from 6:30 to 8, but we can represent like at the table like before and after. So if anyone's interested, like I'm going to be there, and if anyone else is interested to come with me, we're just going to have some resources and then the flyers over there if you want more information. But
So yeah, this is an event where there's a whole bunch of community groups and agencies and organizations who are sharing information with community residents about how they can get involved in their communities. And so when we talk to the organizers, we let them know that we're not actively doing asset mapping currently, but that there are all these other ways to get involved through the discussing analysis, dinner, coming to the All Partners meeting. So we thought it'd be a good way to get more people involved in the work of the All Partners. So if anybody is available to sit at the table, to staff the table with us, that would be great. Just let Meredith know. It's on Wednesday, I think, from 5 to 9.
Where's
It's
War Memorial?
it's at the War Memorial.
But I don't think you have to be available for the whole 4 hours. I mean, if
Yeah,
you can
no.
come for part of it.
So it's 5 to 6, and then I think 8 to 9, because there's a program from 6:30 or 6 to 8.
6:30.
6:30 to 8, yeah.
and if you're only available for one part of it, like the beginning or the end, that's fine. Just let me know.
I can do 5 to 6.
Okay.
Great. Great.
I'm already doing something for the health department. I'll see you.
Next Wednesday. All right.
Does
Well,
anyone else have any more?
anybody else have announcements you want to share with the group?
I was going to share this Saturday out back. We're calling it the Spring Fling Festival. It's just going to be crazy, fun, great events, lots of art, music, spoken word. Tench Tillman's choir is going to sing, the church choir is going to sing, the dance troupe, drum circles. It starts, actually it's 11 to 4, but I'm telling people 12 to 4 because I know how East Baltimore time is. So, and then actually we're going to do a labyrinth. If anybody can't come during the day but is interested, we're doing a candlelight labyrinth walk at sunset with prayers of the community. People are going to work on prayers during the day. We're doing a pew painting, writing down the hopes and wishes of the community on a pew, which is going to be kind of fun. Because anyway, it's just lots of amazing artists. Have some of you heard about the Pedicab Project? You know what that is? Like there's a woman, an artist, doing this project because of her own history, where she drives you around in a cab and she'll ask you questions, and she's writing down the history that she gets with you. And it's she's been doing it for a number of months, and she'll be here to do some of her work. And there's links on our Facebook page to all these different people who will be around, so it'll be a lot of fun. And I was sharing, we're doing healthy, all that noise back there, they're already cutting up tomatoes and peppers and onions, and they're doing recipes. We're doing tofu burgers as well as hamburgers, and trying to create at least an alternative for some healthy food.
So we can send out a note to the All Partners.
Yeah, I've got a flyer here too that and I can send it to you electronically if you want.
Great.
They sample the tofu burgers.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Angela, you were passing around a card. I don't know if you want to discuss that or tell
Feria
me.
Latina. Feria Latina is an annual event sponsored by the Latino Providers Network. And the idea is to bring representatives from the Latino Providers Network and the community. It's about 30 agencies that are coming in to provide information and services. And we usually get about 400 or 500 people from the community. It's a free event, and it's Saturday, May 11th, 10 to 2 at the Sacred Heart Church, 600 South Conklin Street. And it's a free event open to the public. The majority of participants are Spanish speakers.
You said the majority are Spanish speakers?
But we have bilingual staff.
Okay.
But everybody who comes will get services and information.
Great. Nothing else? No other announcements? All right. Update, analysis, is that?
Oh, so today we started the training for the 4 people who are serving as the coders for the, the interviews that we did, the transcripts. Ernest is one of the coders, Roxy Johnson, who's also a member of the All Partners, who's a coder, and then we have 2 students who are also coding. And so today we just went through the software package, and then we'll start the actual coding process next week. Very exciting. Forward momentum.
Yes.
And then, oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
So, as part of the Social Determinants of Health Symposium that was held yesterday, we worked with the Henderson Hopkins School, and Creative Alliance, where a group of kids there put together an absolutely awesome videotape that we opened the symposium with on what I like about my community. And they also did a series of still photographs. And maybe next month we could open this and show it.
Yeah.
Another thing that, going back a few months, that was raised is that with the opening of the Henderson Hopkins School, and particularly the East Baltimore Historical Library, that would be a wonderful venue. I think Neil Edmond actually originally suggested it, a wonderful venue to showcase and launch the findings. I met last week with Eric Rice and David Andrews, the Dean of the School of Education, and Annette Anderson, and they were very, very enthusiastic about that. Additionally, and this is a general announcement, they are very anxious, once that school opens, that the common spaces be used in the evening for community activities. They would love to see some of our meetings there, but they would love to see community meetings there. And they said, I don't have a good sense of the space, but they said that there'll be various configurations, various size spaces from really large to, classroom size.
That's great, that's great. You know, that, you triggered a thought in my mind. And since you brought it up, I'll just say, going back to the Social Determinants of Health Conference this week, some of you were there, I thought it was fantastic. One of the things that really stayed with me, the very last speaker, Tony Eiton, fantastic presentation. He put together some things in a way that I hadn't heard them put together. Many of the things we talk about, but not in the way that we don't talk about them in the way he put them together. One of which was, we've been talking in here about changing perspectives about East Baltimore, and amongst others from outside, as well as people who live here. The way he put it was, we gotta change the narrative. Because the way you talk about things, everything flows from that, which is true, which is what we've been saying. And it has struck me, you know, a lot now that this project in particular can be a very powerful mechanism to help to begin, not like we're the only one doing anything, but to change the narrative, because we will have actual information about assets, and so many people don't think there are any in East Baltimore. I've heard it to my face said, and you know, just dreaming a little bit. In the same way we had a nice video that the kids put together about what I like about East Baltimore, maybe a video of some kind about the assets in East Baltimore, with this information being the basis of that. And you know, some of those assets are people, some of them are whatever we're going to find, but it's just an idea.
Can I add a comment to what it is you're saying? Because my whole approach and whole reason why I kind of got involved in this was really around that. Because I think that it's time that we begin to showcase, you know, as East Baltimore residents, as someone who was here for various reasons, that we begin to showcase what is available in East Baltimore, you know, and talk about the people that are here. Because, you know, even down to the people, we don't, as we've learned through this process here, that there are a number of people that are also assets who bring value to East Baltimore, to the residents of East Baltimore, as well as to the city of Baltimore. And so we need to think about how do we begin, and it really comes down to what we learned in the healing. What is the story we're going to present, and so that we can begin creating, as you say, that narrative. And that's, you know, and that's one of the things that I hope comes out of this. You know, as someone from Baltimore.
Speaking of narrative, we are offering a free course next Thursday night from 6 to 8, paid for and actually put on by the Delmarva Foundation. But I'm going to have to read this because I don't know enough about it. But it's basically public narrative as a leadership practice used to motivate others to join you in action. It's a framework for crafting and telling your story, developed by Professor Marshall Gans of the Harvard Kennedy School. Its values-based system of storytelling is used to great effect in social and political campaigns. In this workshop, you'll begin to develop your personal story, revealing the values that motivate you and which in turn can motivate others. So you're going to be introduced to a new framework for mobilizing people, them to join you in your work. And it's free. It's Thursday evening, 6 to 8 at the health department. I tried to get this out to as many people as I could. You can email it to others too.
Yeah, I just got that. I don't know if you forwarded it to me or somebody else, but I just got it and we'll include it in an announcement. But maybe you could still forward that to me, because maybe that's,
Sure.
because I think there were two different.
Well, then the second one, we forgot to say it's free in the
Right.
first email, so
Okay.
we sent the second one, I'll say
Okay, so that's the same.
thank you.
Great.
That's awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, that does sound very interesting. This one quick, he taught this same guy yesterday, he flashed up these pictures showing how, what he's done at his foundation. He's got it's like a billboard or the side of these huge buildings, and he said one was like life expectancy in this county, 63 years. Life expectancy in this county, or in California, 83 years. And, you know, statistics that you and I may know well, but he said, you know, how people are, really? They didn't know it. I mean, what would it be like if we had something like that, East Baltimore? Really? Wow. I mean, I think that could be powerful. Anyway, just my. So we've kind of.
Yeah, cool. That's very exciting.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we've sort of entered a phase now in our work where much of the, as Amy brought out, the data analysis is beginning to begin, and there's not a lot else going on for the vast majority people until we get some of that done. And in talking with a few people, we thought it might be a good time to pause and reflect about who we are, where we've been, what we're doing now, and where we want to go in the future, if we still want to go somewhere in the future. And a process that will probably take a little bit of time. It's not something that started today, nor will it probably end today. But that, I think, will be our focus for a little while. What do you guys think about that? Does that sound reasonable, or is there something else that might be a more priority or other that anybody can think of? Okay, so we began talking about it a little bit at the last All Partners meeting, but we put together a PowerPoint that really is not a study. It's not anything definitive. It's just some ideas to help begin the discussion. And the whole point really is to discuss these things, agree to disagree, but it gives a little bit of a roadmap. And that's what we'll do. The first slide there, it tells us this is really about review, reflection, recommitment, and refocusing. And ultimately, the questions that I think would be valuable for us to talk about and answer for ourselves are those that are on that second slide there. Where have we been? Where are we now? Where are we going? What do we do well? What do we need work on improving? What do we not do well? How should we, one, track what we're doing, and two, evaluate what we do? We haven't really ever evaluated what we've done in any way. We track it sort of, but we haven't really talked about it. How can we improve how we communicate to others what we do or what we accomplish, and what difference is it all making anyway? And then using all of that information to sort of chart what should really be our focus for the next 12 months. What do you think about that as a roadmap for discussing this? Is something missing there? Is there something else that you think we ought to talk about, or does that sound reasonable at all? Was that?
Sounds great.
I think that, for me, the piece of it that's most intriguing is, for discussion, is where we're going. And how do we build that.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, I'll be honest with you, before I sat down to think about, I put this together, I wrote this, but before I sat down to think about it, if we said let's talk about the future, there's probably just a few small number of ideas in my mind. You may be different. But as I began to think about, let's think about doing something a little bit more comprehensive about reviewing ourselves, and started thinking that actually helped me think about, it brought a whole bunch of things to mind. So my thinking is, by going through these things first, that will then help us or put us in the best position to think about the future. Does that sound reasonable? Rather than starting now with, what do you want to do for the next 12 months? Might be a little bit hard.
I think some of this, a lot of it will be contingent upon how it's communicated, which is what we spoke about a little earlier. And I think we have great opportunities to frame how the information is communicated. The museum that you spoke about, Bob, is just, I mean, it's such a nice marriage, because one of the purposes of the museum is to highlight the pride of East Baltimore. That's what we heard meeting after meeting after meeting. And this just fits in very well. I actually, sit with Amy on the steering committee, but I'm on the exhibits committee. And we are actually moving quickly on the exhibits. But so as you were talking, my mind is just going as to, okay, we have to really bring things together to be, to make certain that this data is part of the opening exhibit. Mm-hmm. Because it just, it's a great match. And I think how we communicate it will then when people see it through that framework of the museum and everything else that's going on, I think it will, just persuade them to get more invested. We'll increase the partnerships. But I think it all works together.
I'm some of these things in here, which I find to be quite interesting, especially around the area of what do we do well, you know, and what do we need to improve, and how should we track and evaluate what we do. Those three areas to me kind of touch on what you're talking about, Edie, which is before we can really start talking about what we have or where we are or whatever it is we're proposing, we should at least have figured out, okay, here are some milestones that we wanted to, some things we wanted to achieve along the way. Because by definition, do we, you know, I mean, we sit, we talk about them, but we don't have it like set out so that we can kind of create at least a brief narrative around that segment of it. Around like the asset mapping, for instance. You know, the fact that, yeah, we did the asset mapping study, but one of the things that we did was we also trained 15 people. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things in it. So in terms of achievements, yes, we achieved that, but we also gave something back to the community in the form of training, and some of those individuals may actually have the opportunity to go on to other studies or participate in other projects. So it doesn't seem like a lot has been done, but there is some things done, and then we have this segment where we're actually doing some training, because one of the things that I'm learning is the program, just the program itself, Atlas, seems to be a pretty well-used program, because almost everyone who wants to have someone do quality data analysis, that's the program that they asked me. So here is something else. We're giving back, we're supporting and helping to possibly build. And then with that we can determine, well, here are what are the other things we would like to see done that will build on it. Because one of the things I hear you say a lot, Angela, we have not reached out into the Hispanic community, but one of the things we're good at happens to be relationship building. So how can we use that? You know, here are some of the things that we've done that we can use to help support other things. And that we aren't really saying those things. You know, we aren't putting up a nice little timeline picture or something.
Yeah.
That makes it easy to communicate those things.
Yeah, I think you're right. It wasn't until I sat down and started thinking about it, I said, wait a minute. We actually created probably about 10 or 12 jobs for what we've done. They were temporary, they didn't last forever, but they were jobs. Real people were paid real money. That's substantial. All right. Well, why don't we jump in? Let's just start talking. And the first question is sort of where have we been? And Ernest has already brought up a few things that, I mean, you see a few of the things that I thought about on the slide there. You may not agree with this list. That's fine. We want to hear from you. You may think that I have forgotten some things, but at least the ones that I put down here were, we formed an enduring collaboration. Last time there was a question about do we really have an enduring collaboration here? Legitimate question, absolutely. There clearly are less people here today than have come, and last time we met, than have come before. Is that, does that say anything about what we have here?
The weather is getting better.
What's that?
The weather is getting better.
Well, I mean, this is why we're talking about it. Is it a sign of the weather, or is it a sign of our enduring collaboration?
No, because same over the last, so in the time I've been here over these last 2, almost 3 years, this is the same thing that has happened every year around this time, because we're now walking into the period of graduation, where people have to now begin preparing their kids to get them out, for graduation, for proms, and all kinds of other things. Angelo here too. Some people just playing hooky left. They just hooking it up. So I mean, is that reason?
I also think that many of us probably have different roles that we play. And this week I've been late in meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And I know that many of us do the same thing, and there is not so much that we can do and go around. So sometimes we have to set up to certain events, and that's what really happens. So maybe we can look at how else can we communicate among ourselves, where this form of meeting could be one way, but maybe other ways that we can communicate, because realistically, more and more things are happening.
Right.
If you go to weather and somebody's getting married or somebody's graduating,
Right.
you're gonna have less and less people probably until September or October when things are winding down and it's like more time to do events. So we really need to be realistic about that.
And also, that's the other thing, as someone who has worked with nonprofits and continue, this is actually a busy season for us. This is really the busy season because most of what we do is outside around the organizing, as Pastor Gary pointed out, they're doing, cookout. Angelo just gave us this flyer here on the Latino Festival that's happening over in the Canton, on the Canton side of Patterson Park. So there's a lot of things that are going on now that is related to a lot of the nonprofits, and then we have various trainings such as CPHA, who will be doing, literally they're doing 3 of them within a week, and 2 of them are back to back. Because they have one Tuesday, then one then the other thing on Wednesday. So there's a lot because people are willing to come out as well. So, I mean, and as Angelo alluded to, there is there's a lot of competition right now. Time and parts.
Let me just piggyback onto what Ernest and Angela were saying. One of the things, let me back up. I think that there is attrition for a variety of reasons, only one of which is the time of year. I think that what drove this group was a set of tasks. And a lot of those tasks that were the collective tasks have been accomplished. And we should feel terrific about that. They've been accomplished. And what will bring people together again will be a set of tasks. Secondly, it would seem to me, in truth, we're either going to spend the next 3-4 months doing a self-assessment, or we're going to say at some point, stop meeting. And in September, when we will have preliminary data, we will have stuff, not to post on the public walls, but for this group. Let's do an event. Let's bring in Jody Kreitzman, who was part of this from the beginning, and let's do something that says we're launching now with preliminary data, and let's focus on what the concrete steps are. I would take it one step further under the heading, what have we done? One of the things that we have done, which is both terrific and as this group, we pay a price for it. That is, there have been some substantial, important spin-offs. The JCHIP Community Advisory Board is an example. That board came out of this group. It is meeting. It is going. It has life and will continue to have life. And people do come and show up and will come and show up for that. So I use that.
Some of the same people too. Yeah.
I would
A
say
lot.
most all
Yeah.
of the same people, and then maybe a few additional. So there have been that kind of spin-off activity. So I think about, if this is going to be a forum, let's use the preliminary data and launch it. Let's launch it about what are the stories we want to tell, and where do we want to tell them, and how do we want to tell them, and how we want to engage with donors. How do we want to engage with media to tell these stories. Because I think that once we know what we want to say, we have avenues for doing that. One last thing, and then I'll be quiet for temporary. So yesterday, no, 2 days ago, one of the panels we had was a panel of philanthropists. This was Abel Foundation, Weinberg, Casey, and the Baltimore Community Foundation. And one of the things that was said, I'm not convinced that they meant it, but I don't care, was that in response to a question, they said, we would very much be open to having a conversation with community members. Then I think Angelo cornered him and said, okay, let's talk. I think, as I said, I don't know that they meant it, but I don't care. Because they said it publicly. And so I think it is a wonderful opportunity for us to say, okay, let's get our act together and use this as a forum. And I would pretty well bet you that all of our old friends and many others would be showing up if those folks said, okay, we'll come. And I see no reason that we shouldn't hold them to it. So that's one of the kinds of things that I would like to put on the docket. But I think to do it within the context of some of what we have to say is the way to go. And if we can do this planning in August or in July, then we should meet in August or July. It doesn't have to be September. But I think it's when we have something, so we can get our act together with the goal then of engaging the philanthropic community around specific things.
Right, because, and that's what we mean, and that's one of the things we're good at, because I think one of your questions, is, as it asks, where have we been, and this is part of it. This is one of the things we're good at, which is shaping our relationships and coming together to think about how best to get something done. And that's what we have done as a group, as a collective, and we have done this very well. And so, in terms of where we've been, we have been sharing our individual stories so that we can all come together to create this story. And it's still unfolding, but it's a story that we've got, and so what does that story look like?
I agree, I'll come with you. And one of the things I'm going to be doing today is pushing us all to be as concrete as we possibly can be about every part of this, both the negative and the positive. So that, because I do believe we have a story. It's not done yet, but I think it's a significant story. And it will get even more significant. But I want to be able, when the time is right, to articulate it well and articulate it right. And so this is why this is important.
In that same vein as what Bob was talking about, I'll just throw it out there. We're going to be conducting some health impact assessments over the next year. We've got 3 at least that we have to do, and I think we're just on the verge of selecting the topics. And we did one previously on the West Baltimore development over by the market, Lexington Market. I think one of the ones this time around is going to be on climate change, but basically heat and what we can do to mitigate the effects of high heat on populations. Everything from trees to the wading pools or whatever. But it's a way for communities to get involved in actually making recommendations to change policy or change the course of an initiative before it's going. And maybe as we see some of this data start to come in, it would be useful to get these folks active in that discussion.
In the discussion of the,
Of the health impact
Health
assessments
impacts.
around the different topics, so that we're gonna be looking for focus groups and whatnot to help us tease out what is really happening
Yep,
at the
yep.
community level.
good,
And what people want to see changed.
good.
I agree with Bob. I agree with what you say about looking at what we've done and focus on what might be next, and maybe put all that together and come out at some point and say, this is what we have. When you have the data, you have something to show, and I think you can make it people interested to people instead of just keep meeting and keep meeting and keep meeting. And you see less and less people, and you think it's something wrong. It's nothing wrong. It's just how things work out. So I think maybe taking some time and just put together some information, and the next time we meet, we have complete information about this is what we've done, this is what we got. Because you're asking a question right now who it's not really the answer because there's still ongoing work. So I think when that work is completed, which is the coding or whatever, you have complete information. You can come and say, because it's not the same thing saying we interview 160 people, we just don't know what they're saying, versus saying we interview 160 people and this is what they say. See the difference? So then you can say what have you accomplished? Because right now we have accomplished some of it, but I think this is not the time to ask what have we have accomplished, or maybe where we have been, more or less we know where we have been, and what we need to do is to get that information to complete that so we can come and say to the group, this is what we've done. And I think that probably better to generate more interest among people and to engage other people to see what's going on, because people want news. People want to know what you've done. People don't want to hear, oh, we're meeting again, we're okay, have lunch, dinner, whatever, and then we just go on. But I think people want some information, and I think what you already have, that you're working on right now, could be that information.
In the meantime, while we're waiting, like maybe over the summer, while we're waiting for all the coding to happen, is there a way that we could maybe like leverage some of the groups, the working groups, or even just the people, and kind of farm ourselves out to other initiatives that we're, because I just feel like I would rather use the time that we spend maybe meeting and discussing all this stuff that we could maybe postpone until the end of the summer to like help with the East Baltimore Historical Library, which I haven't really been involved in, but like maybe we could, or if there are other things. I mean, or exactly. I mean, and I don't want to feel like, I don't want those groups to feel like, oh, we're just latching on, but if there's some way to really actually like, well, to leverage some of the people's time in here that
But
usually
trust me,
spend.
people's time here are pretty busy, because I'm sure most of us, this is not the only thing we do.
Sure.
And there's other things.
And of
that
course,
we
you
do.
can fill it in with other things, but I would love to feel like I was keeping on the work of the CHI through maybe even if it's other projects. And then we can still feel attached to what the purpose is, but I don't know, just.
Yeah, no, I think these are good examples. What I would like us to do, if you agree, if you think it, is to force us to not think about that just yet, but to go through this process of the, I mean, the comments are not wrong, they are right comments. I think it can be beneficial to us if we push ourselves to answer all of these questions rather than just jumping to where we need to go for the next 4 months, 6 months, before we even look at these questions. Sound reasonable? So it's parking lot, it's not striking it, for sure. Can we think about other things that you believe we have accomplished? You see the ones that, as I thought about it, for those of you, and there are a few people that were here then, agreeing on a mission and core values, that was huge. Think about how long it took us to do that. And it was painful at times for those of you who might have been here, but I think that we wouldn't be here today if we didn't do that. And we brought copies of it for you, for those who don't know what that is, and what it took to get us there. They're in the back if you want to see.
I remember those cards one time we passed out, and I thought you were going to just take them up and take them, and then you started reading them out loud. And I had put, Hopkins is a many-headed dragon.
But we didn't know it was
Sometimes
you.
it'll burn your ass. No. I said sometimes it'll burn your ass, and sometimes it'll be a sweet dragon. And Bob said, "Now who wrote that?" But I do think that we shouldn't underestimate the merit in building trusting relationships.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is the core of East Baltimore, honestly. You know, the trusting relationships is invaluable. And I think learning, I think I've shared this with this group before, I don't remember if it was just Bob, but, you know, one of our ground rules here now is you don't say anything about Johns Hopkins that you wouldn't say to their face, right? So if we're gonna have authentic relationships, it means we have to learn to hold ourselves accountable too, because it's really easy to villainize.
Absolutely.
Right? And villainization is a piece, even here in East Baltimore, that's still a piece of what we're dealing. I mean, right now we're dealing with young old piece. You know, the younger folks are the thugs and the which isn't healthy because we're all stakeholders, we're neighbors, we're in this community.
Right.
So yeah, I would notch that mutual trust to the top. Because, well, I mean, I'm not saying that. But in my own priority, I would say that the relationships and the trust building is really the linchpin to progress.
I think that is one of the huge things, is that with an entire collective,
That's
we've
right.
gotten beyond the first level. We haven't gotten to the fifth, but we've certainly gotten beyond
That's right.
the first level.
Would the others agree? Anybody disagree?
And since this is all around where we have been, and I'm not sure how to stick this in here, around the work that we have done. Because although this project is still ongoing, the asset mapping project is still ongoing, but we have actually, it's something that we're doing. Or it's a place where we have been in terms of developing it and actually getting it underway. Now, how we put that in the part where we have been, because I don't mean to be funny, but Bob mentioned it at the last meeting. That was kind of painful. I was there for most of that time, and it was.
What was painful?
The development of the instrument
Oh, yeah.
for that asset mapping, the going back and forth, and we were still at that point where we were trying to develop trust and build a relationship with each other. So again, we were able to come together to get that out there, get it out and get that, and at least get the interviews done. And now we're moving to that. I don't know how we can
So on the
frame that.
next slide, there are some bullets that lay out some of those things, but I think that it would be good to elaborate or to add or.
Yeah, what we have accomplished is actually on 2 slides. I couldn't fit it all in there. So you can see, again, these are just my ideas, and you may agree or disagree, but what do you think? So on the second page, it talks about develop the valued process of engagement, engaged community. I don't know what you think, but if this process had not been in place for the last 4 years, some of the activities that are now going on with Hopkins leadership and East Baltimore community residents would not have happened. Would not have happened. For a variety of reasons. People came here, others came here, and the process, not me or you, enabled, and now we have a J-chip cab. There would have been a cab, but it might not have been constituted with the people that we talk about. I won't read them all, you can see them. What do you think?
Yeah, and this is the other side of the things that I was talking about. So here is down getting those specific items about
have we missed any? Are there any specific items that we missed?
Sure.
Like what?
I think that there's both explicit and implicit capacity building. So I think, for example, Ernest, of you going and giving the presentation that you gave, and the days before that with the dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
As an example of skill building and really having a forum to do it and then to be able to showcase it as an example of really that kind of collective approach.
Right.
That's true. That's a guy I hadn't thought
And
about that.
also under the jobs, there was 2 full weeks of training that could fall under the capacity building around motivational interviewing and how to get people to talk about things that maybe aren't easy to talk about.
Yeah, so, and, you know, and although, I mean, it's not here, but around the whole, so the consortium, the symposium we just had, because one of the big things that was
Is
related.
that us though? Did this group contribute to that? in a
Yeah,
real way?
because one of the big things that came out of it is that there was more community engagement in this year's symposium, and that community engagement was helped to be built by individuals who came out of the CHI, out of this community health initiative, who began to help spread the word and build support for it. You know, it was relationships that started here.
So is that an example of what Bob was talking about earlier, that spin-off things have happened? Is
Yeah,
that- would you?
yeah, that's like a spin-off. Yeah, that's definitely would be a spin-off event. I mean, you know, Repka, you know, would not have known someone like me who would not have been out there saying, hey, you know, have you checked into this? And so, I mean, these are all things that would not have happened. I mean, it would have happened, but it just would not have been at the level that it has been.
Okay, good. I think spin-offs are just as legitimate as anything else, actually. Actually, you know, they say, what's that saying? Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Yeah.
So spin-offs really indicate
It's an
success.
indication of-
Exactly, right. If it's, yeah, so anyway, anything else we've missed that you can think of that we may have accomplished that you think we need to recognize and eventually communicate to others?
I think for the short time that I've been here for now, you have confidence to have the Latino community present at this conversation.
Engaged new communities, Latino community.
Well, and I was going to say that I'm a newbie to East Baltimore, and my sense is that there's just a lot of movement. There's a lot of in and out, and a lot of, and so I think this group has been. I don't mean to hijack what you're saying, but my sense is, I mean, there's been a lot of new folks that have come to the table, right? And it's gone, I think, relatively healthy.
Well,
even though at times, you know, it means reiterating the story, right? That's one thing. We needed to see what we could do better.
Right.
Here's the history to catch you up, right? So we don't have to do it orally around the table, but in the same
There has
breath.
been a lot of movement, but realistically, up to now, it hasn't been Latino participation. As far
That's
as
great.
know.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
That is an accomplishment, even though maybe a minimal accomplishment because it's a minimal time, and hopefully things will continue and grow.
Next steps, right? Yeah.
yeah, I see these as two separate and both important things.
Yeah, they are.
Hispanics have not really been a part of this until now. But we made a decision early on that sounded good and I think is good, but it made our work harder.
Right.
That we weren't just going to find the 5 right people and stick with them forever. We were going to make an open process that people could come in and leave at any time they want forever. And they have done that. And we've
Yeah, I think that voting with your feet is a core principle. When people show up, you have a voice. If you don't
Right.
show up,
You
you don't
don't.
have a voice. And that's fine. Both of it's fine. And, you know, so people do come and go. And
What
they
do we
come
call
back.
that?
Yeah.
What do we call that? I'm trying to articulate
It's
our
one of the full
accomplishment.
principles.
What do you call it? This open, is it like open voting with your feet, I guess? I don't know.
Yeah, but sometimes, I hear what you're saying, but sometimes that may not necessarily be true because sometimes people don't know about it. People are not approached about it. Maybe you did call a specific people, but there's so many other things going on that information was not translated efficiently to somebody else. And if you don't know, you don't know. It's different if you know and you choose not to be there, and then you can't complain because you know that if you're not there, you know. But if you don't know,
Yeah.
then you don't really know. So it's,
I think we're going to come back to that when we say, what can we do better? Because clearly, everybody didn't know about us, clearly. And that's something that we can certainly do better in.
Well, one other thing maybe is the techniques and the methods of the interviewing process is maybe a product that could be disseminated or used, by others. It's been over a year, I think, since I've been to any of these meetings, but I would love to see, you know, all of the things that have been developed and all the training that has been going on, and, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully it's written down somewhere, because I might be able to use it.
Yeah, the asset mapping.
There's a whole manual.
While asset mapping is not unique to us, we fine-tuned something, I don't know what the right word is, that may adapted it to something that maybe could be packaged for other and marketed as something that could be useful to others in similar kinds of communities.
Well, we are already seeing that. I mean, there are others who have said, can we look at this methodology and see if we can apply and use it? So
We should really think about formally writing that up.
that component. I think I've also seen, and these are all very hard to quantify, but they're all very real. I've seen the internalization of these guiding principles in other meetings. Not around this table,
Wow,
but in
wow,
other tables.
Wow.
And I just, one that's very vivid in my mind, but when someone was just ranting at someone else, which sort of felt like, 4 years ago, and someone who was around the table said, "We don't talk like that anymore."
Wow.
And I just like the way, we don't talk like that anymore. And it was really just saying, we need to
Yeah.
talk
What do we call
directly,
that?
clearly, respectfully. You can state
That's
your
right.
point of view
That's
without
right.
pulling punches.
Yeah.
You don't need to scream.
Right.
And to me, that was the
That's right.
internalization of
Of the values.
of values.
I also think it's a form of capacity building, and maybe individual capacity building.
Yeah, it's hard to quantify, but I think we won't finish it tonight, need to, because these
I
are
don't
the
know that we
things.
need to. I think you have stories.
Yeah.
I don't think we can.
Yeah.
Well,
True.
no, well, what I mean is,
We need
when,
to have, we need to have the stories that capture some of this.
well, that's, I guess that, I'm saying the same thing, I'm not saying the stories can't do it for us. But when I say, so when we either say, this might be something that can work in Detroit or something, and then what can we get out of that? I mean, we do it our own way. That's, I think, something that's substantial, absolutely substantial.
Right, and now,
So just to build on that, I think in that case, with that example, having sharing core values and the process of coming up with those core values. Like if it's called internalization of core values, then
Right.
explaining how we came
Right.
up with these core values
And that's
the
why,
process.
that's
yeah.
what I was meaning, just if we're okay with internalizing core values, that's fine with me, but I think it's important to articulate it in a way that it's a bullet that we can then explain or have these stories, because I think that's huge. I mean, we all want to see shiny new buildings and we want to see new clinics and all those other things, but that kind of stuff, I think, doesn't happen a lot, or doesn't happen enough. And whether it's 15 people around a table or 100,000 people, when it happens, it's significant.
okay.
Do you have another one?
No.
Okay.
I was.
Any others before we go to where we've been? Anything else? Mike, we're continuing what we started last week, really pushing ourselves to this is one level of evaluating ourselves and where we've been. We've come out with some very nice, things that we didn't talk about last week. And if you think of any, you may think of it when we go home, just shoot them to us by email or any other way.
So, well, let me chime in, because you'll be very surprised to hear me say a social determinants is a big place of where we've been. And actually, Tuesday was a culmination of that. But when we started this conversation, that was not the baseline.
Right.
But it's a mainstream thing, and I think that's significant. And I think it was a huge step for this conference and the way the conference played out. And I think Tony Eiten's piece of where the future of public health is really a call for us to center around, and not just the university, but the health department, and CBOs, because Bar High is regional. It's the Bay Area Health Initiative. It's regional. There's health departments, multiple, but there's also strong civic engagement. So it's a high bar, and none of us are there as a region, as an academic institution, as a governmental institution, or as a community base, even though we're trying hard as heck. But I think fusing the socio-ecological and the medical model together is not something many areas of the country have done or even tried, and that it's now, at least in conversation, is exciting, because I think it opens up additional possibilities. So that we've taken a step toward that, I think, in generating greater common understanding of what it means and what is possible. There's some continuum that we're all on, and I think acknowledging that we've moved in that continuum is a good thing.
I know you want to hold off on talking about the future, so we can, but I would endorse what Michael said, and I also would suggest that as we look to the future, it is a construct that allows CBOs, that allows government agencies, university, health department, I mean, all sectors. And it also builds on the assets notion that we put forward. And I think that it is perhaps a really good organizing structure for us to say, okay, where is our work? Not that it's going to be in every domain under that umbrella, but where are we collectively want to move this, even as we individually may work in other areas. But, just to put that out now for us to come back.
So the accomplishment is
beginning the development of a construct around
Fusing socio-ecological
social determinants.
There are places that take decades to do that. I mean, Bar High took quite a while for that to fuse, and they're really at the cutting edge of this stuff, as evidenced by the $1 billion bet that they made. But I mean, I think I think the antecedents are there. I mean, the health department of Baltimore is there. Not every health department is there.
So really what you're saying, I think, is that we have moved beyond talking about this and brought together amongst ourselves groups of people representing both sides of that coin and focused on action at the integration of those things. That's really what I think I'm hearing. Because just talking about it isn't new. It isn't new to us, and it isn't new to Baltimore, to East Baltimore. A lot of people have been talking about the need to bring these things together. But I do think there is something new that we have done, and I think what you're saying is when you articulate the city health department and Hopkins, these are people that are at our table.
Yeah,
and we're working together.
I think,
And they trust each other.
And they trust each other. These are the accomplishments. These are the accomplishments.
well, I don't know, right? I mean, I think
We haven't solved the
you
world yet.
You write narrative as you write it, but I think there's a tipping point, and I think we're getting closer to a tipping point. And I don't, the thing about tipping points is it's hard to assign who was the last straw, but certainly for the past 6 years we've been pushing for it, and so I have to acknowledge when we've made progress. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how it all comes out, but I guess what I'm saying is there's a continuum, and we've made progress on that continuum.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can't beyond that.
And just for your sake, because you just came, one of my roles tonight is to push us to be concrete, because I do think we have a story that's worth telling, but we need to tell it accurately and well, and by being concrete, that will help us out.
So if you push me for that, I'd say of the 24 cities and counties in the U.S. that I'm exposed to on every 3-month basis, if I had to rank where Baltimore was, I mean, clearly is not in King County, Alameda, or Boston. However, I think we're in a very we could be there, we're in the second tier, we're certainly in the upper half, right? And so how do you get to the higher quartiles, I think, I mean, that's just, you asked my opinion, what concrete. But there are people that are doing this work around the country that meet and confer and document that on a regular basis. And I think, and we've been doing that with you guys, and we've been documenting where Baltimore is, where we think it is, what our experience has been with the health department, with you guys, with others. And all I'm saying is, through all that challenge of doing this work, and it's a challenge everywhere, right? And it takes years to develop a common language, a common understanding. We have made progress. And so that's concrete. It's not nearly enough, but it's great progress.
Good, good.
Chris,
Anybody else?
let me ask,
Yeah.
it's been going through my mind. So with all of this conversation, which is wonderful among us, but if it only stays here, it's
Right.
not going nowhere. Is it your vision that you're going to write this
Yes,
up?
yes, I would. So if you want to jump to the very last slide on here, that sort of tells you at least what I think, and I put it there so we can talk about it, but the proposed evaluation plan, only because it's just my thought, is that we go through this as the first level, the all partners evaluation, where there's a qualitative talking component as we've begun right now. And then, at least in my vision, it would be nice if we could add a quantitative component where we actually ask some questions and get more quantitative about these things with not just the people in this room, but all of the other people who have called themselves partners with us over the years. And then it may be valuable to even conduct some key informative, in-depth interviews with some people both within the community, within Hopkins leadership, and then people not even in our community that give us a reference point. Maybe it's some of these other places that you're talking about. And then finally pull it all together in a report that I'm just suggesting could be done by the end of the summer.
That'd be great.
I mean, as a process, how does that sound? Huh? What do you say?
I vote yes.
Would that be after you complete all the coding?
No, this would happen in parallel. Well, we're hoping the coding will be done by the end of the summer, but this is a review of us, which is separate from the coding process. So they might be done at the
But
same
if you
time.
review what we've done, the job is not completed, your review is only limited.
Well, yeah, and that's it.
As
And
a-
as you can see on that last slide too, I guess the other thing is my hope, oh no, it's on the first page then. On the first page, first biannual. So in other words, if we continue as a group, this would not be the last time we would undergo self-evaluation. We would do it every 2 years or so that you're right, because we'll always have that problem.
For the first every once in a while.
Or yeah, this is the first, we've been together almost 4 years, and this is the first time we're doing it. I think 4 years is too long. We should have done it before. We didn't do it yet, we should have done it, but anyway.
We didn't do that better.
That's right, we can do that better, that's why I say, well, next time we won't do it better. We won't have been 4 years getting there. All right, I think this is fantastic. We had a good discussion about where we've been. I've tried to write down everything. This has been very helpful. If you think of some more things, let us know. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, what's the next one say here? Where are we now? I mean, what are we doing? This one is probably a little easier to get through because there's only a few focus things going on. And as you can see there's really one thing, but one and a half, maybe two things that are really there. One is the community asset mapping project, which we're in the middle of right now, and I think most people in here understand where we are. We've already interviewed a lot of people in East Baltimore. We'll be interviewing a few more, and we're beginning, as Amy said, training the people how to begin the process of analyzing the data, which is coding it. That's not the full process, but that's a necessary first part.
It's like organization.
Yeah, it's really just organizing, because the analysis, we hope, will be done more here and other places where everybody can input into it. But that's full swing. I mean, we're halfway through that project, and hopefully by the end of the summer, we'll be done with that analysis. The only other thing is something that we've only begun to talk about, a couple of times, and there's nothing really happening yet. We're just talking about it as a potential, and is this what we have called this health opportunity project. We've talked about it at the All Partners level, I think two times or 3 times. But to quickly review what that is or what it might be is, already many of you have said to me and said to each other, where is this all going to lead? It's nice to do this, but why are we even doing it? And in the very, very beginning, I didn't have an answer for that. We felt it was necessary and important. We think it's a good thing, but I couldn't say because we're going to build a building or we're going to get $50,000 from somewhere. I didn't have it yet. So I began thinking about where possibly could we go. And one idea came to me that said, at the end of this, we're going to know a lot about the assets. Some of those assets are going to be skills that people have. Some will be people themselves. And then I thought about my years at Hopkins, and Hopkins spends a lot of money to scour the world for some of the brightest and best young minds. And I've always said to myself, I believe we have some of those right here in East Baltimore that we could find and help and do well. And so it seems to me that we could do some of that with these assets, even when I don't even know what they are yet. There's got to be people out there who have some skills that, with the right circumstances, if they want, could become a business. There's got to be people who have skills but don't have jobs, and with a little capacity building, we can help them make them be more likely to get a job. There's hundreds of community-based organizations over there. Michael's talking about them. Many of them are 2 or 3 shop people. They may be some of the assets. And with a little bit of help, we might be able to help them to go from being small little CBOs to big CBOs, or do better what they do. And there are neighborhoods out there that we all know that right now are not as desirable as they could be, but with a little help. But some people value their neighborhoods. They may be assets. And with a little help, we might be able to turn them into neighborhoods where more people want to live, where businesses want to come, where things are thriving. And so that's where this idea came from. And so, yeah, it's a little bit about creating businesses. It's a little bit about helping CBOs. But it's really, I think, those are the components of health. Those things enable us to be healthier. So that's why it's really termed this health opportunity project, because those things create the opportunity for better health. And we've just begun talking about it because it was just like this, how we do everything. We come up with ideas, we talk about it amongst ourselves. If people think it's valuable, then we take the next step. And so that's almost as far as we've gotten with that idea so far. And the 2 times that we've discussed it at the All Partners level, there seemed to be general acceptance of it. Need to know more information, obviously, but sounds like something reasonable. And so we've just been having some discussions, and that's all that there is to that, really, just now. But as a talking point, what do you think?
Chris, when you have determined partners, what does that mean?
So this is just, so what I'm suggesting there is, when you come to Hopkins or you come to CHI, we're not the school of business. We don't build businesses, or we don't build necessarily CBOs. So in order to accomplish those things, we need partners to help do that. So that would be one of the next steps, or one of the steps that needs to happen for us to reach that goal.
I didn't know which partners.
Yeah, to reach those goals. But what we've done is started with this framework of improving the opportunity for health in East Baltimore, building on the results of the asset mapping project, without even knowing what they are, but at least 4 key areas that we believe we'll get information from the asset mapping to be able to help improve. That's what this is.
I think I saw one of your presentations a while ago about asset mapping, and I think I recollect that that's one of the kind of a traditional goals of asset mapping is to
that's right.
To connect.
Yes.
Help
it comes out of community organizing and community development. It's not just done to know what's good. It's done to use for advocacy at the political level and other levels. I've never heard of it been done this way, to really help people become more, build businesses, or these 4 things. So I think we're again creating a model potentially here if we do use asset mapping to do this. We're still going to use it for advocacy with political leaders or whatever. But you're right, you're absolutely right.
So have you thought about, how exactly you would, connect assets with each other?
Only a little bit. I mean, again, this is just some ideas right now. So, but I put it here because we're trying to talk about where are we now. And since we have begun discussing it at the all partners level, that's why I put it there. But I didn't want to make people believe that there's a whole bunch that's been accomplished here. We've talked about it as a concept. People have generally been supportive of the concept. And now we're beginning to think, okay, just like you said, well, what does that really mean? Who would be the reasonable partners that we think at a minimum we need to have at the table, and starting to have some of those conversations. But really, that's all there is to this at this point.
Can I chime in for a moment?
Sure.
I know when the data collectors were presented, a lot that they were saying was that they kept getting information about individual assets. And I think that's where the conversation came about for the business startups, because that's what I heard the data collectors saying over and over again, that we have these skill sets out there, but people perhaps were not eligible for programs, or they weren't, sort of they needed capacity building assistance. I think that's the sort of the backdrop of where the conversations came up with, well, maybe we can do incubator spaces.
And I'm not necessarily trying to say we're going to start the next Google. We might, and I don't see why there's nobody, I don't believe there's nobody in East Baltimore that could be, but that's a different question. But, we talk about food deserts. It's a social determinant-oriented thing we talk about all the time. We can complain about it to high heavens and bang down on the doors of whoever to try to get food to come here. City Health Department has these food markets. That's all great. It's still not enough. And then I find out, or we know, Pastor Gary is got a garden out there, and somebody else got one over here. Well, what if we had a network where people had these gardens, and then we had residents from East Baltimore operating a little transportation system that picked up vegetables from here to here to here, and then took them to the markets where they're not now so they could be sold. That's a business. That's something that I think off the top of my head, not knowing anything but what I've seen, could be happening. And that's not a business that's starting here and working in Montgomery County. It's benefiting the people right here, but it could spread to Montgomery County.
It's linking assets.
That's just one idea and I don't even know the assets yet.
So you're knocking on my door really strongly again. I'm like, I've been reborn into where am I? So this is good, right? I think you're asking all the right questions. I'm going hard toward this space, I'm tacking away from government, I'm going what I know, which is business.
Me too.
And I've joined the Black Foundation Execs. I'm going to be leading some conversation around social impact investing. So I'm going to go strong on the west side where I already have an asset. I think there's a lot that can be done, and a lot Hopkins could do, particularly around supporting local effort around crowdsourcing, not just the financing, but in terms of how we analyze these assets and networks, right? And if you can show assets and green shoots so people display they want something with small amounts of money, try to match that, or try to find ways to match. I mean, that's essentially what Tony did. He put up 20 million, he talked about 20 million, and then, so now they're able to invest in places where there otherwise would not be an investment. And we know African Americans, I think Latinos are right behind, start businesses at a much higher rate than any other ethnic group.
Right.
They also fail at a much higher rate,
Right.
which suggests that there's a capacity issue. And so I don't know that we need to start an incubator, but there are some. So if we should at least talk to them before, but Morgan has one, there's one on, I'm part of one in Howard.
There are several, there are actually, and there are 4 right here at Hopkins that are getting started from scratch. But you're right. I mean, I think I think the point, and this happens every time we've talked about it, people say, yeah, at first, like, what are you talking about? But then, why not? Why not? But oh, by the way, Hopkins does have a school of business that could be a partner in doing this. At least they say they do this kind of stuff. They train the world's leaders, but maybe they can train some folk in their backyard to do some of this stuff.
So what I would say to close out my thought is, to the extent that it is truly capacity building, then that I think becomes, but to the extent that it's If you do it right, it's a big deal. But if you don't, it's just kind of the same.
I think that, again, that's like everything else, up to us.
I think that when we talk about building a community or trying to do things in the community to bring the community up, community-based organizations are not businesses, but they are businesses in the community because they employ people, because they do things for the community. Unfortunately, we have the thinking, when we think about nonprofits, that they shouldn't make no money, that they shouldn't do it, they shouldn't get paid, and we don't really look at it what it is, which is an asset in the community.
Of course.
But they need funding.
Of course.
I mean, to think that it doesn't work that way is not realistic. So when we think about business in the community, a community-based organization who serves the community is a business because what they are trying to do is provide a service to the community, but at the same time, generate funds, which usually don't come from the community, comes from the outside of the community, so they can sustain their work. So you cannot ignore that.
All right, and that's exactly why, that's one of the components there. So you have the nonprofit side, which has to be fiscally responsible, as well as the for-profit
Yeah.
side.
And so when we talk about the social impact, and we touched on a little bit at the conference, that's that other 95% that foundations don't put out in grant money. And that's saying, hey, you know, that has a place too, right? So can you allocate a little bit to us? Can you lose a little bit of grant money, a little bit of your for-profit money, and blend it together, put a little pixie dust on it, and put it into entities which are having a return for you know, triple bottom line, so return on the community, they're making a few bucks, and that could be a nonprofit too. They don't always
I
have to
agree.
be a
See, that's where I actually believe, done right, nonprofits can be just as profitable as anybody else.
But when they sit on that stage and say, well, you know, and I thought, I don't know what the right spirit was, but if they say, well, if you want to come talk to me about how I can spend my money, you know, whether I should spend it on the poor versus the BMA or whatever, I think a proper retort is, well, glad you asked. So, you know.
Well, you missed Bob's earlier.
Bob's.
We're gonna do that.
Well, good, because that was
We're gonna do that.
incredible.
We're gonna
I thought it was
collectively
an
do
incredible
that.
moment. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah,
But,
everybody thinks it's an election, and we're just, these are not my words, they're Bob's words.
Yeah.
Nobody knows if they're telling the truth about it, but it doesn't matter. They said it, so
but
we're gonna hold them accountable to
Yeah, I
it.
think we can hold them accountable, and I think there are best practices around the country that are saying, well, you could do it this way. And you know, I mean, California now, just put however many, there's some other places in Minnesota, and say, hey, can we do that? Because that would,
Right.
instead of the same grant pool that everyone's going for, that would open up different
Right.
pots of money that don't exist, and that might change the dynamic of how we do business with each other.
Yep. Rebecca, were you
So
gonna say
I'm confused. Are we still talking about where have we been or where are we going? Because
We
I hear
are,
conversation
we've
about
sort of
where we're-
morphed a little bit. Right now, we're talking about where are we now?
Okay.
And that's why, these are the two things that I think, if I'm not forgetting anything, and that's really the discussion of what are we actively working on now. One is the asset mapping project, which is really 95% of what, 99% of what we do. And then this health, I took a minute to talk about it because some people hadn't been here for those other things. But really the point was not to talk about this in detail right now, but just to say these are the two major activities that are ongoing right now.
I'd like to say that in terms of capacity building, it's not really, it shouldn't only be directed on community-based organizations. I think Hopkins can learn a lot about partnerships or how to work, you know, community mobilizing, community organizing. There's so many lessons learned that.
So you're talking about where we should go then, right?
Well, she's talking about where we are.
Where we are, it says CBO capacity building, that's the only thing that's in here. But I would like to propose that in our thinking about where we are, do we feel like we have the capacity of what it takes for
You want a wider swatch of
exemplary
capacity
partnership?
building.
Yeah,
you
so I would
want
like to
Hopkins be
broaden,
part of building
you
capacity,
know,
Oh, man.
learning,
looking at-
mutuality.
yeah.
Thank you.
So wait a minute, help me, I don't think I understand what you're saying just yet.
That's a good point.
Well, she said two
I'm
things.
missing I just didn't get it yet, can you help me?
Go ahead. say-
Anybody,
So
it
she
doesn't
just
matter.
said, instead of it saying solely CDO capacity building under the Health Opportunity Project, say CDO and Hopkins.
Oh,
capacity.
is that the point? Oh, okay.
Can I give you an
Yeah.
example that came out of this project, which was when Patty Brown
J-Chip. That's-
said,
Yeah.
I didn't know how much I didn't know and how much I
Yes.
needed you guys.
Yes.
Right,
Right?
That's good.
right.
That's an evolution from this work. I mean, it's a different project,
Right.
but
She's
it,
saying
but,
it every day now.
but I mean,
But it's good, you're right.
but that doesn't happen naturally,
No,
easily. And if you can spotlight it and replicate it, then it changes the fertile ground for partnership.
well, I think.
And that, is that your point, Dr.?
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that actually is I don't know, I would almost call it an accomplishment, but also something we can hold up to say, this is what can happen when you do these things.
Right.
Yeah.
Other CEOs, believe me, Patty's one of 1,000 CEOs of major hospital systems around the country who don't think they have any need for this at all. And hearing it out of my voice or your voice is one thing, hearing it out of Patty's voice is an entirely
You see, that's why it's so
It's an
important to
entirely
capture
different
that.
thing. That's exactly why we're going through this process.
And that's the point, now that Replica mentions it, both Replica and Mike at this point, is that whole, as we speak of the East Baltimore Health Opportunity Project, we talk about the capacity building from the hospital. That one, that's not showing up, but the other thing is that it's not showing up that the benefits in terms of partnership, effective partnership development with the community, because the community has always sought it from on the outside, but now the hospital, to some individuals, not everyone in there, but individuals are now beginning, as we pointed out, see that benefit and desiring to enhance that and also support its continued development throughout.
Yeah,
So,
you know,
like,
write this
we
down.
did that here. It wasn't, if
Yeah.
it wasn't for, like you said, no, it wasn't for this group, those things would not have happened.
Right, no question.
At least not at the rate they have.
Help me remember, I'll write it down, but when we come to the point of what do we do better, I think one of the things we gotta do is be able to measure, track, document how we've improved Hopkins capacity.
Yeah.
We can do it relatively easy on the community side. We've trained X number of people, we've helped X number of CBOs, there are many easy ways that we think of to do that. How do we document it on the Hopkins side?
Well, that's
Other
great.
than stories.
Well, and
And
that-
stories are powerful, I'm
No,
not
but it's
negating
important for me because I've been getting my butt kicked fighting with y'all
I know.
for 5 years. And I want that credit. I don't deserve it all, but I want a little bit of it. And I think Nia's gonna want a little bit. I mean, it's, oh, but you get what I'm saying, and that is progress.
All right, good. So there's not a whole lot to talk about because those are the only two things that are really ongoing now, and we can talk about better how we do that. But the only point was, are we missing anything else going on? I don't think we're not doing anything else, are we? As a group, not individually.
I also want to mention, again, I'm going back to the CBO capacity building, and I want to piggyback what was said by Angelo. And it's a very competitive environment right now for CBOs. So even though we don't function as businesses, or we don't think about not as a profit, we should.
Absolutely.
That's where CBOs are
Right.
heading
Yes,
towards.
absolutely.
And those that can swim and survive and last are those that are business savvy.
Right.
So, in our thinking about CBO capacity building, then it's really important for Hopkins to, there are all kinds of nonprofit management
Right.
programs now. Why are they flourishing? Because it's become really difficult for nonprofit, and we need to shift our thinking and function as
Absolutely.
businesses.
Well,
So how can Hopkins then,
Right.
because
Help.
Hopkins functions as a business, it's a hospital, but it's an incredibly
But see, this
well-functioning
is the
business.
truth, the misnomer with nonprofits
Yes.
is that nonprofits mean that you can't make a profit.
Talk about
That's
it.
actually not true.
Mhm.
It means that your primary reason for being in existence is not to make profit. But it doesn't mean you can't and shouldn't make profit, and many people who start nonprofits don't understand that, and this is why they get into trouble. The reason for a for-profit business is to make money. That's why it's
It's
for-profit.
actually easier.
Of course. But that's a good point, Rebecca, and I think that's part of that.
I just wanted to chime in just based on this conversation. When I initially came to Hopkins, my question was, and I've seen this here, so I'm sort of going back and forth between where we've been and where we're going. But I've seen us embark on a community-driven process, and I'm thinking specifically about HES. And because my question was, you know, we have this theory of community-based CDPR, community-based participatory research. So my question was, why isn't there researcher-based participatory research that the community needs? Because the impact is on the community, as opposed, you know, and how can the community lead efforts that engages the researchers? And I think we actually started sort of outlining a workshop for that, just kind of preliminary workshop for that. Because we are doing it well in some areas. Living Classrooms has done it well with Hopkins. I think Living Classrooms does the Safe Streets program. They've done well with partnering with Hopkins under their lead. So how do we teach our nonprofit and CBO partners? How do we say, okay, how can we support what you're already doing? And how do you then, how do you incorporate us as Hopkins into your grant funding? And how has it worked well? And I think we learned that by looking at those examples that have worked well, learning what people need at the nonprofit level, what they want to focus on, and then sort of teaching how do we look at this. You know, we have the researchers and the nonprofits in the same room doing workshops and whatnot.
I would say more so vice versa. I would say more so vice
But
versa.
that's something.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
No,
What were you saying right there?
I would say, you know, you asked about how can community-based organizations include Hopkins in their research efforts. I would say it's more of the reverse. How should Hopkins really reach out to community-based organizations and include them and their and opportunities that they're seeking for funding, and then also build the capacity of community-based organizations to be savvy, not only about grant writing, but understanding research. And so I think Hopkins and East Baltimore will go a long way if Hopkins reaches out its tentacles and build the capacity of community-based organizations to be one, research savvy, and two, to be able to be effective in grant writing, and Hopkins to see itself as a really key partner in conducting research, understanding the strength, the capacity, the smarts, whatever community-based organizations have. So instead of the CBOs reaching out to Hopkins, partner with us for this, it's Hopkins is the big operation. It has so many research projects, and it's really important that they reach out and include community-based organizations.
I see the roles on both sides, because I think both sides kind of, you know, there's different situations call for you to approach it differently. I think, especially for small, if we're building their capacity and the issue is always the finances, and maybe 2 or 3 people doing wonderful work. If the nonprofit pursues the grant, we're not talking about Hopkins overhead in those funds. And most of those funds get directed to that nonprofit.
So listening to you, I realize I'm not crazy, because what you're saying is what I've been preaching for a while now, and how I'm trying to run the organization that I run. And I think that when we look at the East Baltimore community, I think Hopkins can play an additional role to empower those community-based organizations that right now you have in place that are basically struggling. And the only ones who are really going to make it are those who are a little bit shabby and trying to figure something out. But many of them are not, because they don't really have the resources or the know-how, and they're going to fall down. And what happens is when you have less and less community organizations, you have less and less participation. And that creates a problem within the community. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at when we look at community organizations and the role that Hopkins or the city or the state or somebody else to play. Because it's not just Hopkins. Hopkins is a big boy, but there is other big players, all those founders that came to that conference the other day, and other people. What happens a lot of times, more savvy organizations like, I don't want to mention names, but they got people on the staff, and their job is to write grants and get these huge grants. Most community-based organizations in Baltimore City don't have that. So we are in a disadvantage already to trying to compete with those big boys. So in some type of way, building a relationship where Hopkins' role could be empower these community organizations and help us to get grants, not where they control the money, but where there's more repartition of the money and where it's more where everybody benefits, not just one specific organization.
That's exactly a part, at least my thinking when it says CBO, building capacity, exactly.
So, so a couple things. Couldn't agree with you more, and where I really think we're going, and so Tony he was a much bigger version, a gorilla-sized version versus a monkey-sized version was me, of Place Matters Alameda. So he was my counterpart in Alameda, but he's got $1 billion, I think. And what he said, if you listen carefully, is the same thing that the World Health Organization said, which is these efforts will fail if what you guys just described does not happen, period. So, but that means the city, the state has a whole nother level. I mean, folks are just learning the language, much less what this actually means. And there's, there's progress, but there's a ways to go because it's not natural. It's not what you've done before. And so to really understand that without CBOs getting strengthened, and there's some shakeout, and some folks probably need to go away, and there's some M&A that has to occur and all that. But without really strengthening the CBOs, then this thing's not going to take hold. And it's not just the money, it's the decision making, it's big data, it's being able to put your finger on the pulse of information. And the intelligence community is doing it really well. I know because they've approached it. The big corporations are doing it really well. But government at all levels, except for those, high intelligence stuff, is not doing it very well. And that's where public health is going. But if we're not being purposeful about it, and so that's one piece. The other piece is, in some cases, CBOs do know what they want, and they can't get in the club. And in some cases, they don't know what they don't know. But I'm telling you, where we're going to attack hard in this city is asking hard questions. We'll leave y'all alone for a while, and we're going to pick on the funders, because they ain't giving us no money anyway, not locally. So we're going to say, if power is health, in a 63% black city, how many nonprofits are over $1 million? And what's up with that? And what's up with the Latino population, which is the fastest growing? How are you purposely building capacity in these places? Because you can't, if you follow Tony's thing, you can't just parachute in help. You can't just assign a bunch of grants. You can't do it for them. We wouldn't do that in a foreign country. We would not send the CIA in and say, we're going to prop you up, and then when we leave, we build you up so that you can be a participating democracy when we leave. That's how we do our foreign relations, but we're not doing it in cities. And so all over the world, WHO, Tony, and all the cutting-edge social determinants folks are saying, without CBOs having the capacity to engage in conversations with departments of health and with other planning departments to say, hey, let me help you guys tack, or let me tell you what our folks are thinking in a way that's non-threatening but that's embraced, then this thing won't take hold. And I think there's a learning curve for all of us, but that's where we have an opportunity to go.
And one other thing to add to what they're saying, as we look at that, because one of the things I learned, and it took me a moment to really learn it and figure it out, because I wrote grants, and one of the things I rarely talk about is that I know how to write grants. Right? And I was writing grants in excess of $1 million for people.
Good to know.
But the problem that I found out is that, there are people who go, and people who had a chance to get it, but they fell short, and I didn't realize this at the time, is that they do not understand how to manage the grant management. Because it's wonderful the money may be out there, but grant management becomes a concern. And so what as we think about capacity building, let's think about how do we create either a centralized management system for the smaller shops, or begin to build capacity in the organizations around grant management so that they can go after those larger dollars, that they can be able to sustain their projects. Because many of those grants, especially after you cross $1 million, can go for years.
So I think, as with all these things, there are multiple strategies, and I'm a big believer in zigging when everybody else is zagging. And I think actually, there's another strategy that I believe is more successful, can be more successful than all these. And, you know, because I've seen this at Hopkins, one of the reasons Hopkins doesn't reach out more and build capacity of community-based organizations is because they don't see, I'm not saying, listen carefully what I'm saying, they don't see any value. They don't know what's happening, and therefore they believe nothing is happening. And so you're asking them to give money to what? So this is why I think the asset mapping program is so profound. Because I don't have to go beg you for money to help me get better when I show you what my value is, and why you need it, right? Because right now they need help in a certain area, and they're willing to pay for it wherever they can get the help. They just don't believe any of that help is in East Baltimore. That's why East Baltimore doesn't get the help.
And yet my chief investment officer returns more on investment than yours, and knows it, because I got the money.
Right. So what we can do is what Tony said and what we've been talking about. By having assets and starting there, we change the narrative. We change the perception. And now you need to fix this problem in East Baltimore. Well, we have these assets that can do this, and we've gotten their capacity to where they can do it already. Why aren't you paying them to give you the value you want? It's not just giving me to help me to be better. And I think that's a much easier sell when you have a need that is being fulfilled to get payment. And so that's why I think this project is so much potential with it, because we're starting with assets and we're building it better.
Do you think that, I just want to put my cynical hat on, but do you think that is really the functionality? I mean, you think that, okay, the capacity and the argument is one thing, but the receptivity and the politics on the other side and the systemic nature is something else. Do you think this is, you really think this has legs politically within that infrastructure?
If I didn't have legs, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be wasting my
I think
time.
we got the partners.
I don't believe everybody's
I just want to ask.
I'm just saying, I don't believe everybody's gonna lie down and just give us everything. But I think it's a different narrative. It's one they're not used to, and one that speaks to their core values.
Cool.
And I think it has.
Happy to hear that. I just want to.
I think the other reason for lack of partnership.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean,
I'm sorry. Patty would not sit down with us if she didn't think, now she might be right or she might be wrong, but if she didn't think there was value sitting down, she wouldn't do it. I know that.
But I also think there are changes happening, and I think that even though maybe not everybody sees the value, they realize that something needs to change, so they start looking at other things. That might be something.
But you don't, I agree, and I'm not saying don't do it there, I'm saying there's multiple ways, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's partly, I wouldn't say Hopkins' survival, but the change, the funding change from the U.S. government position is that these big institutions of higher education have to partner with the community-based organizations. So that's the push. So sometimes you have to think, frankly, what is the intent? Is it really, Hopkins and others partnering? Is it really because they feel it's important, or because it's really driven by federal funding? And then the other thing is that it's not only that maybe Hopkins doesn't see that community-based organizations have value, but it's really about partnership takes time. It's just really, I mean, look how much time I've spent in this process.
Right.
So partnering with community-based organizations takes time. And then you also need to look at the culture. So when you bring university with the community-based organizations, there are cultural clashes that makes it also kind of difficult for partnership. So there are several layers.
For me, all of that is part of the value, because when a Hopkins person, it's not worth their time to put in the time to get what they, but you're absolutely right, I'm not disagreeing. But I think it's changing,
It's also a clash within the community, because people are
course.
getting something that I'm not getting.
Of course.
If you get it, you should get it, or if they get it, there's also part of that happening within our own community, with the Latino community, with the Black community, against the Black and the white community. All that is part of that.
Absolutely.
So that's also.
Absolutely. So,
but that's also part of the resource constraint, the fact that CBOs have been under-resourced for so long, which is why I keep going back to, in addition to this narrative, we got to find some alternative sources of finance that increase the pie, because that, if we keep going after the same crumbs, then you're going to, some of that's going to continue no matter what.
So we only have a few minutes left, and a lot more to talk about. So let's stop just for a second. Well, I think we should go through this process before we sort of decide what our next steps are going to be. I don't want us to take 10 years to go through this process either. I think the process is good, but I don't want us to take 10 years. What do you think is the best way forward to complete this? I want this group, or a group that comes to our All Partners meeting, to finish going through these slides as a group. That's one level that I think is very important as a part of this. The other things can happen offline, or at least some of them. And we can do it, I guess, one of several ways. One is another All Partners meeting, which would be in a month. But if we would do it that way, then I would probably say, I wouldn't start at the beginning like we did today. We'd start where we left off.
I think there are 2 questions that we haven't answered.
There's several, that's what I mean. We need
No, I
more
thought there were
time.
2, though. Was there more than 2?
Yeah.
Because we were jumping around.
There are a lot of questions.
Maybe we can invite comments from the group offline. Somebody can collect the comments, summarize the comments, share them with the group, and next time we meet people.
Okay.
That's where we start from. Start from the comments we made, go from there.
So I'm hearing you're willing to take another All Partners meeting to discuss this? Is that what I'm hearing?
Discuss what the results were of the people.
Okay. That's not what I heard. Tell me what I heard.
But
If it's good enough for us to just share what we want online, offline, and that's okay with everybody.
But if it takes you three All Partners meetings to go through all of this, there's something wrong. It shouldn't take you 3 meetings to go through all of this.
I must be honest, Enzo, I'm not sure I agree with that, but
I just think that, because I think we are repeating some of the things that we already spoke, and I was at the last meeting present, and some of the things that we are saying to them, we already spoke about it, and now we're saying, let's have another meeting. I'm afraid to have another meeting. At the end of that meeting, we still haven't finished.
But this is why, just to be clear, this is precisely why I'm asking this question, and the reason I started over is because some people weren't there last time. But that's gonna happen every time. This is why I'm having it, because I can't do that anymore.
So if you're halfway through, how much time would you need to power through the rest? It's really 5 pages.
May I offer a suggestion?
Yeah, we just spent half an hour on one page.
So there's, yeah. Yeah, we spent 2 hours on 4 pages. Because it generates a lot of discussion. But I think now we've had pretty solid conversations around, half of these slides. If we could lay it out with the discussion points that we've already had and the suggestions that were made, we could do it one of 2 ways. We can send that out to everyone in the All Partners and ask them to add to that, and then next time we focus on the others, or we can also then have blank pieces of the others and ask people to fill it out in advance of our next meeting so that we can come to the meeting and have all the results.
I want to go back to Bob's question. So it's exactly, receive the input. Your next plan is to do an evaluation piece for all the partners who aren't present?
Well, all of this is proposed. That's an idea of way to go forward. It's one of the things that I think we need to talk about or decide upon some sort of way. But it was just an idea.
And I think if we do it the way where we summarize everything that's been discussed at this meeting and the last meeting and send it out to all the All Partners, I don't know, I wrote myself a note if there's a way to do it like through a simple survey monkey or something where it shows like what has already been discussed and then people can just input. That might be a way to both
It helps not to have to
discussion,
tease.
right.
Yeah, does that make
But then
sense? Like
also
it helps to see what others have added
Right.
without having to.
Generate it all.
Right.
Yeah, because you might see what we've discussed today and then be like, oh wait, but there's this huge
Right.
piece that's missing.
Right.
Will it include an evaluative component or no? That's going to be separate.
Yeah, so I think that when you say evaluation, you just mean going through this process, right, Chris?
Me?
Yeah.
Which process? These slides?
Yeah.
No.
these are like.
I'm talking, I think there are at least two things we're talking about here. One is this process we're doing tonight of going through the slides. I don't want that to take 10 weeks. That's only part of it. The idea in my head, which is one thing to discuss with this group, had 1 or 2 discussions with Bob about it, is should we engage in a broader evaluation of the whole thing, of which this is just one part. But I don't think that conversation, I mean, it's one thing to talk about, but we don't need to spend weeks on that. But I think it is valuable for at least one of these to get through these slides. And that, but I don't want to take, if we take, my view is if we take one more meeting to do that, we need to be able to finish it at that meeting. There should no more time be taken. And I think I'm open to having SurveyMonkey or anything else in between. Our experience has been trying these things. It hasn't been utilized too well, but I'm willing to try it again.
I guess I'm concerned that people won't come back another time in terms of process. So I'm being honest, that's just my, because now I came at the end of last time's meeting, and there was quite a bit going on in terms of feelings, thoughts, etc., unless I read that wrong. And so to be quite honest, when I saw the agenda for tonight, I thought, well, I thought that was what last time's meeting was. And so my concern is really, I'm sort of hearing from other people, my concern is whether people are going to really want to come back for another session because we've done this. And the other piece that I'll just share on that too is I think, so we've spent so much time in terms of what we've done right. But I do think the important piece, and the important piece in terms of moving forward is what we have not done.
Exactly.
But I don't know if I'm going to come.
Well, here's I think you're absolutely right, Joan. And you came at the end, which is what, just to put everything on the table, the reason I chose to do it all over again is because it was only at the end that we had that many people there. In the beginning, when we started, was it 6 people? I think it was 5 people at the beginning. So I'm happy to do it any way we decide, but recognize what we had last time and even this time when we started, although it was a little bit more, it was really very few people. And so it's an attempt to try to get more people who come later or near the end involved. So all that aside, what's the best way to proceed? Is it to put something up either by email, SurveyMonkey, and be done with it? What we get is what we get, and move forward with this piece, with this piece, or
compose what we have, and if we have another meeting and say this is what we're going to do, we're going to finish it, and you need to tell people, thank you very much, keep going until you finish, get it done, so we have something concrete. Because if not, in the next meeting, we don't need to start all over again if somebody wasn't here, because we'll be killing the horse again.
Yeah,
I think we got to add one thing to what Angela was saying. Not only do we cover the comments that have been made across these 2 meetings, but we have about, before we get to that final part where we set the priorities, there's about 3 questions that are in there. And we also include those 3 questions, get those comments as well. Let's get those comments so that when we do come back, we aren't going through the 6 questions and getting people's feedback at that point. It's going to be, this is what has been said, this is how people are seeing this, and then we talk about our priorities, and as a part of those priorities, because I'm looking at the very last page of this, and it's talking about the all-partner evaluations of a qualitative evaluation, quantitative evaluation around what's happening, and that's where we're moving from at that point, getting people's feeling on how would they like to see something like that done, as well as what are the other things we can do to begin measuring our performance. We can begin measuring our performance. Because you're right, because one of the things that we've done over the last 4 years is we get to these points, we get started on something, and then we have to keep restarting because of that. So let's clear everybody out here.
So I don't disagree with either what you said, especially for efficiency's sake, but the reality is it 4 years?
It's just about
almost 4 years.
All right, so how hard would it be to, because you know how this goes, right?
Right.
There are key people,
Right.
that have been here for 4 years,
Right.
checked out for whatever. Hell, you talked to me a month ago, I managed all this general, but then we have a social determinants conference, everything's good, everybody's peaceful again. So I'm just saying, we gotta move on, but is there a way to move process forward by saying, hey, you know, here's the people, I mean, have we checked in all the sign and shit? Like,
So this is why I think it's important to do these other ways. Because it doesn't matter if we have 10 of these, it's only gonna be a certain number of people coming to
Right,
these.
but in other words, to recapture to say, you know, folks have been here through this part, and so just kind of capturing, you made 200 meetings, whatever the number is, we're about to wrap this process. You might want to chime in at this point, or forever hold your peace kind of thing, you know.
You mean
But I tend to think what Bob said is true. When we get to the next steps piece, that's where we're going to get engagement.
Yeah, they'll
When we
come
get
back
the
when
data,
there's an it
when-
to
that-
do.
That's when
Okay.
people are going to
They'll
want to
come
re-engage.
I just want
A
to
lot of folks,
play devil's advocate.
It's
I
not-
want to move too, but like,
I'll speak personally. It's not that I think what we're doing here is unimportant. It's that there's 100
Exactly.
things on my
Competing
plate
for the same-
that are
Overstood.
called, right.
That's right.
We're all there.
And we're all
So,
there. So
we're all
that's
there.
why I stopped.
Forward.
That's right.
agree.
That's exactly.
I just don't want to step on a landmine because, you know,
I think being invitational and doing as much as you can do,
yeah.
I mean, it's reasonable what's been done.
You are not money, so you can
And-
always.
So then, okay, so we're already over. Do you want us to try to put something online or on SurveyMonkey ahead of another meeting?
And I think that what we can, I mean, if the answer is
Yes.
Is that a yes?
what those of us around the table who think it's an important and valuable thing to do,
We'll do
we
it.
can then reach out to those that we know are not at the table, whose voices aren't being heard, and say, hey, in case you didn't get this email, now's
Right.
the time.
Right. All right, so we will put something together online or SurveyMonkey. Last question, is there willingness, at least for those who are here, to not redo what we've done, but do what we have not done in the next All Partners meeting, or no? You want to just leave it to the stuff online?
I think we should complete it.
What's that?
No.
I think we should maybe kill this horse once and for all. Just meet one time and get it all done, because if you don't, you open the door for people to say, well,
I agree.
it was not complete.
But I'm asking you, I agree with you.
Even though
Okay.
you're more comfortable, whatever. but it's
How about if we add those pieces that we haven't discussed?
Yeah.
With an indication that these, the questions below will be the focus of the next All Partners.
It's fine with me.
And you can accept comments.
Yes,
To
yes.
expedite.
If you can't be at that
That's
meeting, please come.
So we're all clear, and this is so you can hold me to it, and I can hold
Initial
you.
week finish.
The next meeting, and please come on time and encourage, will be what we have not discussed up until this point, and we'll have something online. Thank you all, guys.
Amen.
Appreciate you coming. Time for the benediction.
What you doing, man?
Oh, my
Another
goodness.
boring meeting?
Oh, you were?
Thanks, guys.
Please load up, play, have some place to go.
If you want to take food.
I know.
I put it
Right in your way.
I know.
down.